Thank you, Richard. I think I'll pick up and try to add some observations of my own based on my experience in California. I think Richard had some very valuable and useful advice there. One thing that I would add to it is that it is important to pick an issue where, in fact, some sort of legislative action is feasible. Now, much as you and I would like to have legal marijuana and would like to get that old legalization bill passed, something like that is not even worth talking about from a political standpoint right now. You'll be doing a great favor to your congressman and legislator if you make it clear that you realize that it is politically impossible for them to come out and say, I'm in favor of marijuana legalization today. They'll understand that. You see, you make it clear that you understand that much, but then you can start talking about other things. And one of the things you can talk about, by the way, is you can say, all right, maybe we ought to have, maybe you're willing to back a reprioritization of our drug policy. Would you back a commission to study our drug policy and give a comprehensive program for what we ought to do from here? Something like that opens the door gently to the prospects of studying legalization. You could talk about something like that, but even that is very general at the present moment, and it's much better to have particular bills on your mind. Well, we haven't had any particular bills in our favor for a long time. There are a lot of bills that come up against us, though. And the best way for us to get started right now is to go out and oppose those particular bills which are attacking us. And there have been plenty of them. And I want to discuss one in particular, the Smoke a Joint Lose Your License bill, in a moment. I want to give you a couple of other examples of bills that we can pick on. There are a lot of technical bills that come along to the legislature, often regarding, for example, marijuana cultivation. Increasing penalties. These often have dire consequences for personal cultivation cases. We had a bill like this in California a couple of years ago. The Attorney General, who was a Democrat and had considerable influence, because we had a Democratic legislature too, was asking that the state set a limit to the number of plants people could grow and have grounds for claiming personal use and thereby be eligible for diversion. Presently, to get arrested for personal cultivation, you can go into court and say, well, it's my personal use, and you show the evidence, and if the court accepts that, you get diversion, and the charges sort of get dismissed after you go to drug school. Under this bill, the Attorney General is going to arbitrarily say anything over 10 plants is a felony, no matter what. All right, no excuses. Well, we know how absurd that is. We know how many people grow for more than 10 plants for personal use, and there's plenty of technical reasons for this if you understand how marijuana is grown. You have to realize they don't understand how marijuana is grown. They don't understand personal use. They really don't. Now, we could have, easily missed this whole thing if we hadn't been following the legislative calendar, hadn't gone to Sacramento to look what was scheduled, hadn't phoned in to a couple of committees and asked what was scheduled, and had some people who are willing to talk and give us honest answers. And usually there are some people who will talk to the public and give honest answers of what bills are proposed. I mean, they really should do that. So you should fish around. You might find a bill there that only one or two legislators know about, and other legislators don't know about at all. That just happened to us this year. In fact, a bill that would have taxed possession with intent to sell, basically. They caught you with drugs. With possession with intent to sell, they would have put a tax on it of $500 an ounce, and there was a penalty, so really it was $5,000 an ounce for marijuana, $5,000 an ounce for LSD, $5,000 an ounce for anything. This absurd bill, somehow everybody passed the Senate as usual unanimously, with the understanding that it was going to be bottled up in the House, in the Assembly. Well, as it so happened, that had happened in every previous year, but this year, for some reason we don't understand, it didn't go through the normal channels in the Assembly, and it was about actually to pass. And we just happened to discover this. We phoned the legislator who normally scuttled this bill, said, "Hey, did you hear about this?" He said, "No." And we scuttled the bill at the last minute. And we gave that legislator valuable intelligence. He appreciates us more now, too. So phoning around and talking to different people is very valuable. On these technical issues, like the 10-plant limit bill I was talking to you before, we had Ed Rosenthal come in on that, and we went and testified before the committee. And once we were there to testify about what constitutes personal use cultivation and how absurd an arbitrary plant limit is in this context, basically they had no response to us. All they had were some cops coming in saying how on a Mississippi pot farm the government could get 1 pound of marijuana per plant, which even that I think is now turning out to be a lie, but that was their claim. And that's one point, of course, in Mississippi without helicopters going on or anything else like that. Once we explained what the facts of the situation were, the police really didn't have any response to it, and we scuttled the whole thing. In fact, Ed and I went out for a private conversation with the people who were pushing for that bill, who turned out to be some local sheriffs in the county of the legislator who had proposed it, and we got them to concede that, once we talked to them, they were willing to concede, well, look, no, you're right, we don't want to arrest guys like you, and your friends, we're not after you nice people who are just home cultivators, but we do have a problem with people who are sliding by and, faking personal cultivation, stuff like that. And we were willing to, and we were able to get to a point where we said, all right, well, could we come to a deal whereby, under 10 plants would be decriminalized? All right, we'll settle in like that. And then over that, we can have real tough penalties, all right? But just give us our 10 plants. Amazingly enough, they were ready to agree to it, but the larger legislative agenda, I mean, it was impossible to get a bill like that through the California legislature. But that shows what can be done. Let me say another important thing here is you should know where to go. I mean, where the juice is for a particular bill, because every bill goes through particular committees, and those committees may not have anything to do with your particular legislator or your senator, state senator, or assemblyman. Often they go through just one committee chairman, and really not through that person himself, but more through his staff. We have a staffer here who knows all about that. But don't feel that you have to talk to the congressman, the assemblyman, or whatever. You probably never will. You might talk to an assemblyman. You'll be lucky to talk to a congressman. Don't worry if you don't talk to that man. If you talk to the staffer who's writing the legislation, you will be accomplishing everything you need to accomplish. And you can accomplish everything you need to accomplish without ever talking to a legislator outside of perhaps on the floor in testimony. I'll talk a little bit more now, finally, about the Smoke a Joint, Lose Your License bill as another example of a defensive bill which we face right now. In fact, we will be facing this from now to basically through October '93 and probably beyond. The political situation is, last year there was an amendment, the Solomon-Lautenberg amendment to the House Transportations bill, passed Congress, and this amendment required the states to automatically suspend driver's licenses for 6 months for any drug offenses, and regardless of whether they have anything to do with driving. And all drug offenses includes personal use of marijuana and possession. And really, this was aimed at marijuana decrim. All right, it was conceived by Bill Bennett for that purpose. It was introduced in the Senate by Alphonse D'Amato, the notorious Republican from New York, and in the House by Gerald Solomon, equally notorious New York Republican right-winger. And it passed by a fairly wide margin with support from a lot of liberals.